Hey everyone, putting together a little survival hunter guide at the request of one of my viewers. So the first thing I'm going to start off with here is just kind of a basic ability overview of how survival hunter works. So really our core class mechanic is Mongoose Bite, and our resource is Focus, which I have as a resource bar in the center of my HUD right here. And the way Mongoose Bite and Focus play together is actually a pretty interesting dynamic. But basically, the simple version is that Mongoose Bite deals damage and also gives you a stack of Mongoose Fury. Every stack of Mongoose Fury increases the damage of your next Mongoose Bite by 50%, stacking up to 6 times. However, casting a sequential Mongoose Bite does not extend the duration of your Mongoose Fury buff. So, you get 14 seconds to basically try and get 6 Mongoose Bites done so that you can get the full benefit of your Mongoose Fury. There's 2 reasons you want to get it to 6 stacks. The first reason is if you have the 4 set from the current Nighthold tier. When you reach 6 stacks, you gain 20% increased damage for all of your abilities, which is pretty huge. And the other reason is our artifact ability. When you channel your artifact Fury of the Eagle, it does 500,000 damage at my gear level over 3 seconds, increased by Mongoose Fury. So that's 500,000 damage multiplied by 3, basically, because Mongoose Fury is increasing it by 300%. So that really multiplies to usually around 2 million on average when you include the 20% damage buff, certain talent procs, and if you're using Aspect of the Eagle before you use your Fury, which is a 30% damage increase and also increases your crit chance. So, it adds up to a lot of damage. I think my average damage output of each Fury of the Eagle is probably around 3 million, which is a lot of damage for 3-second cast. So you might notice on Mongoose Bite, it doesn't use any focus. What uses focus mostly is our Flanking Strike, which uses 50. We only get 100 focus. So Flanking Strike uses half of our focus. And the interesting thing that Flanking Strike does is it takes account our Mastery, which gives you a chance for additional Mongoose Bite procs, and it doubles your Mastery chance, or if you have the tier set, triples your Mastery chance to generate another Mongoose Bite charge. And so the way that works is I'm going to go up to this target dummy, and we'll just pretend I have everything up already, and I'm going to do 1 Mongoose Bite cast, immediately Flanking Strike, and you see I already got another proc there, and then I'm going to continue spamming Mongoose Bite until I get another Flanking Strike, and I throw that in there, always making sure I'm not capping my focus. And through that 14 seconds, your Mastery on top of, usually you can get maybe 4, most likely 3 Flanking Strikes and a single run of your Mongoose Fury, should definitely add up to 6 Mongoose Bites. Usually more, sometimes if you're very unlucky, less, but about 95% of the time you should reliably hit 6 stacks, barring something doesn't happen in a boss fight or whatever you're doing that forces you to run away or not be able to finish your Mongoose run. So here I have kind of a breakdown of my damage done on a recent heroic Croesus kill that I have. This is kind of just like the damage you should be expecting to do as a survival hunter, and this is over about like 4.25 minutes fight. So, as you can see here, Mongoose Bite is a huge one. Almost 30% of my total damage was just purely casting Mongoose Bite. And then I kind of play Fury of the Eagle into that as well, which is another 8%. So more like 35% of my damage was basically just stacking Mongoose Bite and throwing in Fury of the Eagle. Then Flanking Strike is your next highest ability, which is a little under 20%. And you know, the damage that Flanking Strike does on its own is very good, and then you can add on top of that the chance that it will give you more Mongoose Bite procs. So basically these three top abilities are the main ones you want to focus on, but you also can't forget about all your other filler abilities, which I'll go over in just a second here. So aside from Mongoose Bite and Flanking Strike, we have a few other abilities that we want to basically keep on cooldown and typically take priority before you want to start a Mongoose run. So a few things basically to check before you start building Mongoose Strikes is Explosive Trap on cooldown, is Caltrops / Steel Trap on cooldown depending on which talent you took, is Lacerate on your target, do you have your On the Trail dot applied by your Harpoon, do you have Murder of Crows if you took that, and is your Mok'Nathal stacked to at least 2 if you've taken that talent. And if all of those conditions are yes, then you can start spamming Mongoose Bite. And so I'm just going to do a quick little rotation here. Let me get the right talents first. This is basically what I will always take for a single target fight. And for like Croesus, I'm always going to do Mok'Nathal, Snake Hunter, Steel Trap, Serpent Sting, Spitting Cobra. These other 2 don't really matter, but I'll go over them in a minute. Alright, so let's pretend this target dummy is a boss. DBM countdown's going down or whatever. I would pre-pot it too. I'm not going to waste a pre-pot on a target dummy. Then I Explosive Trap, Steel Trap, and Harpoon in. Harpoon doesn't work on target dummies though. Then I'm going to do 2 casts of Raptor Strike to get Mok'Nathal up to 2. I'm going to get my Spitting Cobra out. I'm going to Flanking Strike just to consume some focus. I'm going to apply Lacerate, get another Raptor Strike in there because I need to keep it up. I'm going to Flanking Strike again to keep focus down. And then I'm going to start my Mongoose run. And here I have Snake Hunter up and my Aspect to the Eagle up, which I'm going to basically use in my first run to just get this huge burst damage out. And I'm going to just keep spamming my Mongoose Bites basically until the buff falls off. And right there, I actually screwed that up, and that's something you want to look out for. If you Mongoose Bite just a little too late, you're going to end up accidentally starting a new run, which you might not want to do. Although with Fury of the Eagle up, that's perfectly okay to just immediately start a second one, because you're going to be getting so many procs from the cooldown being up. And so, just a quick overview of what all just happened there. So basically first thing you want to do, Explosive Trap on cooldown. There's pretty much no reason to not use this on cooldown unless there's a huge wave of ads coming, like say Scorpion. You know there's some more scorpions coming. You want to apply that dot to everything. So Explosive Trap the Scorpions. Steel Trap, only take that for single target, or you take Caltrops for AoE. So either way you want that basically on cooldown all the time as well. And then Spitting Cobra, if you've taken this ability, that just generates focus, does a bunch of damage. Use that on cooldown, no reason not to. And then Raptor Strike, you pretty much only use this if you've taken Mok'Nathal, which you should always have single target, and honestly it's pretty good AoE too. In heavy AoE I kind of find it takes too many globals, so sometimes I'll go for Animal Instincts, which doesn't do, it's like 5% lower DPS than Mok'Nathal, assuming you can keep Mok'Nathal up 100% of the time. But Animal Instincts is a very viable talent if you can't keep Mok'Nathal up or you don't want to spend too many globals. Lacerate, pretty much just always want to keep up just a dot, nothing more than that. And for cooldown usage, I always take Snake Hunter no matter what. I don't like Murder Crows, just doesn't get out as much damage I think as Snake Hunter, and Snake Hunter allows you to reliably get 6 stacks very quickly if you want it, a lot of burst damage, very good for your opener. And so pretty much I just try and pop Snake Hunter on cooldown, assuming, and you never want to pop Snake Hunter unless you have 0 charges of Mongoose Bite and it's not about to come up again, because Snake Hunter is going to give you 3 charges of Mongoose Bite, so it's going to cap out your stacks immediately. And if you have even one Mongoose Bite charge up, when you use that, you're wasting one, and that's not good. Aspect of the Eagle does quite a bit of things. It increases your crit chance by 20%. It gives your pet basically additional 25% mastery to proc Mongoose Bite, and mastery will give your pet auto attacks a chance to generate Mongoose Bite. So that's how you get more Mongoose Bite procs, is from your mastery, and that's from your pet attacking. So if your pet's not attacking, you're not going to get any Mongoose Bite procs. So make sure your pet's always on the target, and you need a pet for flanking strike as well. So pet is actually useful as survival, although in my opinion it's kind of annoying to have to rely on a pet for a lot of your core mechanics, but rambling a little bit there. Anyways, aspect of the Eagle, the big thing that comes from Eagle is, first off, aspect of the Skylord on your weapon makes it increase all damage you do by 30%. And if you have Jaws the Mongoose, which gives you 20% more crit damage on your Mongoose Bite. Aspect of the Eagle's crit chance bonus is also very good. So what I typically do is I will use all my Mongoose Bites in my opener, Snake Hunter, 3 more Mongoose Bites, and then I'm going to pop Aspect of the Eagle right before I do Fury of the Eagle. So 3 Mongoose Bites, Snake Hunter, 3 Mongoose Bites, Aspect of the Eagle, Fury of the Eagle, and then your pet's probably already generated a couple more Mongoose Bites by the time you're done channeling this Fury, because Aspect of the Eagle gives you basically 30% mastery. And then pretty much normal rotation after that, you're just going to be getting a metric fuck ton of Mongoose Bite procs for 10 seconds, or I should say 7 seconds following your Fury of the Eagle. If you're not doing an opener, these two typically don't line up anymore. Aspect of the Eagle is 1.6 minutes, Snake Hunter's 2 minutes. So you're going to be doing this kind of interesting balancing act of like Snake Hunter just to make sure you reach 6. I try and use this off cooldown because it's so valuable. Aspect of the Eagle, I try and get off cooldown as well. You never want to use Aspect of the Eagle until you've consumed at least 3 Mongoose Bites and you're at 3 stacks of Mongoose Fury. So basically what you're doing is you're going to do your run of Mongoose Fury, and then you're going to be at like 0 charges or whatever when that ends, and you're just going to be doing filler rotation from there. So filler rotation is when you do your next explosive trap, your next steel trap, your spitting cobra, your harpoons if you want to reapply on the trail dot. And if you're not sure what I'm talking about, this artifact trait makes your harpoon apply a dot that's refreshed by auto attacks, so you don't really have to worry about it too much. Make sure your last rate's up. So it's kind of like a yin-yang kind of thing in a way, where you're going in, let's say the yin is what I call the filler rotation, so you get in the traps, the dots, all that stuff, and then the yang is when you start doing the mongoose. And then when you're in your mongoose run, that's almost entirely what you're doing is going to be mongoose or flanking strike. If there's any point that you can't get either of these two in on your mongoose run, then you can maybe throw in some fillers until you get your next proc. At my gear level, I typically am almost always spamming these two during my mongoose run. So when you look at all your abilities here, one thing you'll probably notice is they all say 5-yard range. So melee range wouldn't have 5 yards on there, and basically what that's saying is that we get 5 yards farther from melee than any traditional melee class. I believe feral druids get a bonus like this as well, but this can be very useful for certain fights, especially if your group has too many melee, that allows you to kind of skirt certain melee mechanics that would otherwise kind of leave you outside of range. Star Augur is one that comes to mind. My group typically has a number of melee that are all stacked up, and the melee will all get the fire that they place on the ground, kind of blocking you off from being in melee range. But as a survival hunter, you can actually sit outside quite a ways and still continue getting damage in. One thing to be wary of though, I've noticed if you sit at the very max range of where your abilities kind of change in range here, like if you're seeing right now all my stuff is red, If I step forward, now it's all lit up. At this range, let's see if I can auto attack. Yep, I can. Some bosses you won't be in auto attack range, but your abilities will still be in range. So I'm not saying that your melee or your auto attack is like very short compared to your abilities. Your auto attacks definitely do still have that 5-yard range. It's just like, I don't know, you kind of have to step forward one step, and it's hard to tell sometimes if you're actually in range of autos or not. And that's something you can notice with certain trinkets that I'll go over later in the video. So now that I've kind of gone over the nitty gritty of the abilities, you're probably wondering, what talents do you choose? So talents for survival are actually pretty clear what's single target and what's AoE. The first row, like I said before, I always try and take Way of Mok'Nathal, 12% damage increase if you can maintain 100% uptime. It's pretty hard to argue against that. But like I said, if you can't maintain 100% uptime with Mok'Nathal, Animal Instincts should be your go-to choice. It's very valuable. It's not going to add as much as Mok'Nathal, but if you're not getting anything out of Mok'Nathal, then Animal Instincts is going to give you a lot more. Makes the rotation a lot simpler, and it's just very easy to use. Throwing axes isn't something I can really see being useful in any fight for Nighthold. There's not really any situation where getting in that range damage is more useful than just taking any of the other two talents. For the second row, I stated earlier, I always take Snake Hunter. Mortal Wounds you should never take, it's just not that good. Murder of Crows does do competitive damage, but I find that I get more out of Snake Hunter typically than I do Murder of Crows. Again, if you want to make your rotation simpler, stick with Murder of Crows. It's very easy. You just put a dot on, minute cooldown. Third row doesn't matter. Take whichever one you please. However, I find the most use out of Disengage, especially for fights like Croesus, where you can get some more uptime and then disengage at the last second. For the fourth row, Steel Trap or Caltrops. Steel Trap for single target, Caltrops for AoE. Never take Guerrilla Tactics. This is not good. For fifth row, none of these really matter. I prefer Camouflage just for the healing and stealth component, which I find has some utility in dungeons. Sticky Bomb could be useful for an AoE interrupt. However, the knockback that it says it has is actually like 1 yard. It's not really a knockback. It's only useful for maybe interrupting, but it's not very reliable because it has a 2-second charge up time. So you can't really predict what you're going to interrupt with it. So maybe useful dungeons. I think it's more of just a preference thing. Ranger's Net is really only PvP. I don't see that being useful in a PvE environment ever. Sixth row, Serpent Sting, single target. Butchery. You can really take Butchery if there's any fight where you reliably have 2+ targets. Butchery does a ton of damage, is totally worth the focus cost it has. There is absolutely no reason to not take this, really. In fact, the only reason you really don't take it single target is just because of the focus that it uses, where you could be getting a lot more out of just flanking strike instead. In any situation where there's cleave, like I said, 2 or more targets, Butchery typically outranks Serpent Sting. One interesting mechanic to note with Butchery, it takes place of Carve. And with this trait you see here, Carve deals 10% increased damage for each additional target hit. So Butchery actually scales upwards exponentially. If you're in a group with 10 targets, you're getting an extra 100% damage on each target hit. So, kind of weird math going on there. So, let's say you Butchery 10 targets. Let's forget about this for a second. You're already doing 10 times damage with Butchery. So that 429,000 it says in the tooltip is now 4.3 million. But with this bonus, because you're hitting 10 targets, you're actually doing almost, I'm going to say, we'll just round it down to 800,000 damage to each target, and then multiply that by 10. So you're actually hitting for 8 million instead of 4.3 million. So Just neat little note there. In my opinion, Survival is probably the strongest AoE class right now, just because of Butchery. The amount of damage it does is insane. And final tier, pretty much hands down Spinning Cobra in almost every situation. I sometimes take Expert Trapper for some very unique things. I take Expert Trapper for world questing just because Spinning Cobra, the time it takes to get damage in doesn't have a whole lot of application when things die instantly. Expert Trapper also increases Caltrop damage by 50%, which can be pretty useful if there's a lot of AoE. I'm gonna hesitate to say 6 or more targets. Expert Trapper probably wins for AoE just because of the Caltrop damage, but it's kind of hard to say. Spinning Cobra is actually your most damaging ability for the amount of time that it takes to use it. 1 global cooldown for about 2 million damage, something in that ballpark. You know, that's a very rough estimate and probably very wrong. Anyways, Spinning Cobra, pretty much always take that because of the focus it generates and the damage it does. Alright, so with talents out of the way, we're going to head over to stat priority, which is pretty big one that a lot of people ask questions about. The answer is haste. Pretty much always haste. If it has haste, it's probably okay for you to wear. That said, with the most recent patch, they added in this new talent, Jaws of the Mongoose, which I kind of touched on earlier. Increases your critical strike damage of Mongoose Bite by 20%. So your crits for Mongoose, instead of doing 100% more damage, are doing 120% more damage, which made critical strike take the place of versatility as their second best stat. So if you're looking for best in slot gear, it's going to be haste and then crit. If you can't get crit, I'd say haste versatility, and if you can't get crit or versatility, haste mastery. And if you can't get haste, try at least to go for crit versatility, and you'll probably figure it out by now. Mastery is by far our worst stat. And you're probably wondering yourself, but if mastery triggers more Mongoose Bite procs, don't we want more mastery? And that's a bit of a logic trap, because almost at our base percent mastery of 4%, you can almost reliably get enough Mongoose Bite procs every run to still get to 6. 4% is probably a little low. You might notice that there's frequent times that you're not reaching 6. Most people are going to say 8 to 12% mastery. And that number varies, whatever you're really comfortable with. I think 8% is enough. I would say 12% is kind of a hard cap on mastery. If you're above 12%, you're probably at too much. And the reason we say that is because you really only need to get to 6 of Mongoose Fury and get your Fury out. Above 6, you're not really gaining any more damage, although it's very good to get more Mongoose Bite hits in there when you're at 6. There's a certain point where you're getting too many procs and you can't use them quickly enough. Some might start getting wasted, and if you're spending too many globals on Mongoose Bite, then you're not getting in your other filler abilities. So just a little catch there with mastery. Basically, if it has mastery, don't get it. That said, the mastery is kind of unavoidable. That's why I say don't go for it. You're pretty much never going to encounter a situation where you don't have at least 8% mastery. It's pretty hard to not get. But yeah, haste, there's no cap for haste. You can be at 200% haste and you can still benefit from more. There's no point you're ever going to realistically hit a number of haste that it is no longer valuable to you. And that brings us to best in slot items. Now for the current tier, I'm going to say try and go for helm, shoulders, chest, gloves. It's hard to say really your best in slots. I'm gonna not really list all of these. What you really just want to go for these 4, and then shoot for items with haste crit on them. If you're only going for Nighthold gear, I will list these items in the description below this video. if you really want to try and shoot for those or make yourself a best in slot list. But forgetting that, really the only things that you want to be looking at hugely are your trinkets and relics. I have listed here trinkets from Nighthold. Night Blooming Frond is very good. And I have listed Arcano Golem Digit, but right now it's very competitive with an equal item level Convergence of Fates. Arcano Golem is good because of the cleave damage it does. If it's a fight without any cleave, Convergence of Fates is definitely going to win. And what Convergence of Fates does, if you're not sure, it's basically best in slot for every melee class, but it reduces the cooldown of your Aspect of the Eagle. So if you have the Legendary Bracers, which reduce your Aspect cooldown by 35%, and then you also have that trinket, I've been told you can get Aspect of the Eagle down to an average of around 40 seconds, which is almost perfectly lined up with your Fury of the Eagle, and that's what makes those two so good together. If you don't have the Legendary Bracers to complement your Convergence of Fates, you're probably not going to get as much value out of it. But that said, Convergence is very good, Arcano Golem Digit is very good. But if you're going outside of Nighthold, there is the Great Bloodthirsty Instinct, which if you're a hunter, you should already know about. Bloodthirsty Instinct is hands down the best trinket for survival hunters. If you can get Bloodthirsty Instinct at an equal item level to any other trinket, Bloodthirsty Instinct's going to win. There is just no competition with this trinket. The only other one that comes close is the Eye of Gwarm from Trial of Valor. And Eye of Gwarm, it's a bit of a bitch the trinket to get for the way we want it. So if you look here on this loot thing that I have open, Eye of Gwarm, 860 plus, agility, plus a random additional stat. The random additional stat that you want is haste, but it could roll any of the four. And that's what makes it kind of shitty to get, because when you're going into, pretty much you want to be going for Mythic Gwarm if you want best in slot trinket. So you want ideal situation, Mythic Titan Forged rolled with haste. Now that is a lot of RNG to overcome, and you're probably never going to get the one you want. So I'm going to say don't waste your time trying to get it. If you're already running Mythic Gwarm every week, or you have a lot of extra time, more power to you to try and get that. If you can get Mythic Titan Forged, Bloodthirsty Instinct plus Eye of Gwarm, you will do so much more damage than any other hunter out there. It's like not even funny. And add-ons. So in my other video, I had a question, and you probably saw in my rotation, when I target things here, you can kind of see these suggested abilities, and it basically suggests what ability you should use next. And if you are wondering if that's cheating, well, no, not by Blizzard's terms of service. Other DPS might look down on you for using kind of a tell me when version of an add-on. However, if you are taking the Mok'Nathal talent, your rotation does get very complex trying to keep up Mok'Nathal on top of all the other stuff you're watching for. And when you're doing all of that in a mythic boss fight, things can get kind of hectic, and in my opinion, it's just a lot easier to be able to glance down and see where you should be at in your rotation instead of entirely focusing on it and maybe missing a mechanic. So especially if you're still learning survival, I definitely recommend it. It's called Hekili. And I'll list this in the description of the video below, and you'll need a plugin for Survival Hunter to make it work. And if you're not a Survival Hunter right now, I'm sorry to break it to you, this only works for a handful of melee classes right now. I don't think there's any ranged or caster classes that have it. If you can get over the whole stigma of using an add-on to kind of tell you how to do your rotation, Hekili is very helpful, and I find my DPS is quite consistent when I'm using it. Barring Hekili, another add-on I really love, Ask Mr. Robot. If you want the full features of it, does have a small monthly fee of, I think it's $5 for 3 months. It's a very agreeable price. and it kind of serves the function of telling you if something is an upgrade or not. At least that's how I use it. So you can see here on my screen I have this big wall of text with the Ask Mr. Robot add-on. You just copy that wall of text and you pull it over to the add-on here, and you just go to optimize gear for your character, and you can scroll down to best in bags here, paste that wall of text, and find best in slot. Obviously it's not saying any recommended upgrades for me because I'm already wearing all the recommended upgrades, but if you were, say, got an upgrade in your bag, it would have a little arrow telling you what you need to change in there. However, if you don't want to pay the fee for Mr. Robot, or you just don't want to deal with all the hassle of alt-tabbing sometimes, a good secondary to that is an add-on called Pawn. And an example here I have, if I mouse over an item, and you can see my bags, there's kind of like this arrow telling me it's an upgrade. So at the very bottom of the tooltip, you see like survival, a number, and what % upgrade it is. So it's telling me that this is an upgrade, but I can promise you this isn't an upgrade. That's why I'm not wearing it. But if you're running a lot of dungeons and you're not sure if something is an upgrade, Ask Mr. Robot or Pawn is very helpful tool. That said, a tool is only as good as the person who wields it. Don't always assume that these things are 100% right, especially when it comes to legendaries and trinkets. Trinkets are pretty accurate on Ask Mr. Robot. Legendaries are not. So if you're ever confused on the weights of trinkets or legendaries, there is Icy Veins, which is also very frequently used by a lot of Simcraft people. They do have their own best in slot list here that you can use. I think there's a couple of these that I mildly disagree on using simulators, but you can see they recommend Bloodthirsty Instinct, Eye of Gorm, and stuff like I was saying before. As far as simulated trinkets here, this shows you how good those are and like how good they are at certain item levels. Scrolling down further here, you can see all the legendaries, and it lists in order how valuable they are. Basically, the only legendary that you really want to go for is Call of the Wild, which reduces the cooldown of your aspects. Kil'jaeden's Burning Wish is a good second trinket, or just a good second legendary, really, if you can get your hands on it. If you can't get that, Trapping Treads are pretty good, nothing significant, and the rest of these are all kind of situational. None of these, except for Call of the Wild, are a significant DPS boost. Kil'jaeden's maybe a little bit, but the only one you're going to notice a huge increase is Call of the Wild. This one's kind of required to really rank if you're worried about ranking on Warcraft logs ever. You better hope you get that legendary. But yeah, that's the basic overview of survival. If you have any questions, please feel free to leave them in the comments. I check comments almost daily, so I will try and get back to you as soon as I can. Any other survival hunters out there who happen to come across this video or have some other insight that you want to add, feel free to do so. Thanks for watching, and good luck.